So you just got your Gravitone in the mail. Let's unbox it. First thing you'll notice is a Move Tone sticker and thank you note for being one of the first 50 adopters of the first round of Gravitones. So thank you for that. You can go to movetones.com for a wiki and a forum for instructions on how to assemble and program the Gravitone, as well as links to the GitHub featuring the Arduino library to help you start developing with the Gravitone. Inside the box, there's a bubble wrap kit. Inside this kit, there's another bag. Inside this bag are all the components you need to assemble a Gravitone. We're going to put together a Gravitone kit. If you buy the kit unassembled, these are the parts you get in it. You have a Teensy card that shows you the different pinouts on the Teensy. You get the Teensy microcontroller itself. You get a battery. You get two small adhesive pads, a row of header, and a partially assembled device. The tools you'll need to assemble the Gravitone kit are solder, a soldering iron, end snips, a Phillips head screwdriver, tweezers, and a razor knife. So now we're going to go into assembling the device. First step is to unscrew the screws in the device. There's 4 small screws, they're Phillips. And this is what you get inside. There's the main circuit board with partially attached screen and the buttons and a speaker press fitted in. So the first step is to cut up the header into the appropriate length. And then you'll need one small piece of header for the V-back pin, so you'll have to cut one of these off. Make sure you kind of cover it with your hand because they tend to fly around. The next step is to cut the V-in to be a USB trace. And you can see it's denoted on the card here what exactly to do. So you want to take a sharp knife or razor knife and cut this. This is kind of tricky, but you just have to be very careful. And run the knife over it a few times to make sure that you've got it cut. And if you're not sure, do it again. After you've cut the trace, you can set the header into the Gravitone PCB like this. Don't forget your single right there. And then you want to set the Teensy on top of that. And this makes soldering it easier. So then you'll need a soldering iron and some solder. A couple things to note. You don't want the Teensy riding up on the pins, so it's easy if you tack down a couple. I like to go for the corners. So get one corner, make sure it's pressed down all the way. Get another corner. And get the single pin so it doesn't fall out. Make sure it's sitting on the headers. You don't want any space in between the Teensy and the black of the header. So now you've soldered the headers onto the Teensy. The next step is to solder the other side of the header onto the Gravitone board. Again, you want to make sure that the Teensy isn't up and out of the Gravitone board at all. You want to make sure it's flush and pressed against it. You can kind of press down on it to make sure that it's flush and tack it in the same way you did the Teensy. So press down to make sure that it doesn't ride up. Hold it down. Get the other side. Check and make sure it's flat. And then do the rest of the pins. So now you've soldered the pins to the Teensy and the Gravitone board, and the Teensy is fully attached. The next step is to solder the OLED pins to both the OLED screen and the Gravitone board itself. Do the OLED to the headers first. Then solder the pins to the Gravitone board. Again, make sure that the OLED screen doesn't ride up any. You want the headers pressed flush to the Gravitone PCB. You can do this by getting the solder on there and then holding it down before you release so that it doesn't ride up. And then again, check to make sure that there's no space between the PCB and the header. After you've soldered the OLED screen to the Gravitone PCB, you'll need to snip the remaining header. Again, make sure these don't fly. The next step is soldering the speaker wires to the Gravitone PCB. Insert the Gravitone board back into the case. Attach to the board on the two pads left in the middle. You want to insert them from this side. The polarity doesn't matter. After you insert them, lift it back out and flip to solder. The screen is somewhat in the way, but if you're careful, it's not that hard. After you've soldered the speaker wires into the Gravitone board, take one of your sticky adhesive pads and take a side off of it. This is going to be used to hold the battery in place. Attach it right about there. Next, get your battery out. You want to insert the battery into the socket first. And you want to make sure to place this a little to the inside. So with a little space, don't put it too far that way. Get some tweezers. Peel that off. And push the battery into place. After you've attached the battery, the last step before you put the back on is to put the other adhesive pad onto the top of the micro USB port of the Teensy. This just helps to keep any forces from the micro USB cable from putting extra stress on the port. You're ready to put the back on the Gravitone. Sometimes the speaker wire gets in the way and you have to move it over. They're pretty flexible though, so you can just shove them with your finger. After you get the back on, put your 4 screws back in. You don't want to tighten the screws too tight, or they'll pull the heat set inserts out of the back side of the shell. Just snug them. And if there's a little gap in the case, you can close that with your hand and then tighten the screw a little more. And there you go. There's your assembled Gravitone.